Serving Nigeria Senator, Prince Chinedu Nwoko, well known as Nedo Nwoko, has listed and narrated some of the things he has done for the family of his absconded fourth wife, Regina Daniels, particularly stating that his mother-in-law, Regina Daniels Mother, Rita, received 125 million naira from him in the past 2 years alone, apparently challenging the mother-in-law earlier media statement that none of the senator's children looked like a child of a billionaire, and that she on her own spent her hard-earned money to support the senator's election, in addition to the $50,000 Regina Daniels gave to the 65-year-old Muslim husband from the southern part of Nigeria. Outside that, Senator Ned Nwoko apparently tried to explain why his brother-in-law, Sammy, was arrested and detained after his wife, Regina Daniels, ran away from her matrimonial home and decided to end the marriage with the serving Nigeria senator on the ground of domestic violence, intimidation and oppression that made her look like nothing in the house of the senator, who she swiftly replied yesterday that Ned Nwoko never married her legally, and she was apparently still a minor at age 17 when the Nigeria serving senator allegedly forced her into early marriage. Details of Regina Daniels' statements and the legal implications will be reported and published in our next news report for proper clarification and understanding, so that appropriate government bodies like the Nigeria Police Force will be held accountable to take decisive action for the protection of girl-child against sexual abuse, molestation, raping of minor and child marriage. According to the serving senator, Ned Nwoko, who attached 2 videos to his statements of Sammy, Regina Daniels' brother, having misunderstanding with some of his domestic staff and the policeman at his house. These videos show Sammy, Regina's brother, repeatedly coming to my home and harassing my children and domestic staff, especially whenever I was not around. His visits were often aggressive and disruptive. This is someone I sponsored through his last 2 years at the University of Ikpoma. I bought his musical instruments, rented and furnished a flat for him in Abuja, in addition to the house I bought for Regina in Asaba before our marriage for the use of all of them. I also routinely provided allowances to all members of the family, including her mother, Rita Daniel. Indeed, in the last 2 years, I have a record of transferring 125 million naira to her alone. When Regina started her rehabilitation, there was a clear instruction by the doctors to strictly restrict people, especially her enablers, from having access to her. The therapy was arranged after I noticed troubling changes in her behavior linked to her dependence on certain illegal substances, including going for 48 hours without sleeping and eating every 2 hours. Unfortunately, Sammy, Destiny, some of their siblings, together with a few of their friends, notably Sonia Uche Montana among others, constantly defied those instructions. They would come into the house uninvited, sometimes forcing their way in, and would bring her the same drugs she was being treated for. Instead of helping her recover, they encouraged her addiction and completely frustrated the efforts of the doctors and therapists working with her. It is important to note that Lawrence, Sammy, his girlfriend NK, Destiny, Sonia, and others also took the same drugs as Regina. In fact, Lawrence and Sammy were the ones who first introduced and supplied these drugs to her. They were deeply involved in the habit themselves, and rather than helping her get better, they kept drawing her back into the same destructive lifestyle. I do not drink alcohol nor smoke. In fact, I am a vegetarian. So I found these characters and behaviors reprehensible and totally unacceptable. Just 4 weeks ago, I woke up around 5 a.m. and realized that Regina was in my room and on the phone. She was clearly high, and she knows that I do not want her in my room in that condition. I asked her to go to her room, and she told me that Sammy's girlfriend was in her room. I was alarmed and angry because that girl should never have been in my house, let alone around Regina, since she is one of the enablers who constantly bring her the substances she is addicted to. I told Regina that the girl had to leave, and one of my drivers dropped her off. 30 minutes later, Sammy came to my house shouting and demanding that I come downstairs to face him. He said I had no right to ask his girlfriend to leave my house. He was ranting and threatening, waking up everyone, including the children. I eventually went downstairs and had to instruct the security to physically push him out of my compound. The level of audacity was shocking. Without the influence of drugs, could he have been so bold and disrespectful? They did not stop there. On several occasions, they verbally assaulted and intimidated the police officers stationed at the house for security. The officers were simply following instructions to restrict access for the sake of Regina's recovery, but Sammy and his group would insult and threaten them. Whenever Regina wanted to go out and I was not around, she would become extremely hostile toward the police and domestic staff. She would shout, threaten, and use abusive words, insisting that she must leave the house no matter what. There were at least 2 serious incidents where she left home in the evening and did not return until the next day. The first incident, she returned in the morning around 9 a.m. When I asked where she had been all night, she casually said she was at a nightclub. When I questioned why she would stay out all night, ignoring my calls and refusing to answer messages, her response was, "You are not my father, so don't ask me where I was." I found out that she was with Cassie and that Cassie was staying in Regina's house in Life Camp. Cassie is the chemist and supplier of the group. I had to go to Life Camp at 6 p.m. to ask her to leave. With her around Regina, the therapy became a joke. On another occasion, on the kid's birthday to be precise, I returned home with the kids because Regina said she would stay with her Nollywood friends for dinner. She didn't return until 5 p.m. the next day. I took so much nonsense just for the sake of the kids. I also knew that drugs had a lot to do with it. As to her reasons for continuing with drugs, she will always say, just like her mother, that it is a celebrity lifestyle. They will always mention 2 well-known pop stars. Imagine the pain of a husband trying to help his wife recover, only to have the process sabotaged by her siblings and friends, the very people who should have been supporting her healing. This pattern of behavior made it almost impossible for her to recover. Each time progress was made, they would undo it by smuggling in the same drugs she was fighting to give up. The entire household lived in tension and fear because of the constant harassment, interference, and disregard for boundaries. It will be interesting to know her reasons for the violent behavior in the house the day that Sammy and other siblings came and attacked my staff and security, taking Regina away after doing a video which they posted the next day. Why did they do that video? Why did they post it? They simply planned and orchestrated a script all in my absence, regardless of the fact that my kids were there. They took away many things from my house, including one of my phones, money, and many other items. Everything that happened that day was in my house, in my absence. Nobody was beaten, and nobody could have contemplated that. It is blatantly false to say that I sent thugs to beat Regina in another house. The video that went viral was filmed entirely in front of my house by Regina's sister and her friend. It was a pure Nollywood scenario, in front of my property, in my absence. Sammy should have a life of his own outside of Regina and focus on building his career independently. When his brother Lawrence went to London a couple of years ago to do his master's degree, I personally sponsored him with $75,000 for tuition and upkeep. I sent him abroad partly to help him escape the toxic environment of drug exposure and bad influence around him at the time. Out of fairness, I offered Sammy the same opportunity, but he declined, insisting he wanted to remain in Nigeria to pursue his music career. Unfortunately, he has since been arrested several times by both the police and the EFCC. His behavior has become increasingly violent and unstable. What he needs now is total rehabilitation and professional guidance. Otherwise, his aggression and self-destructive tendencies will only worsen.
Nedo, bringing you the news in a more digital way.